welcome to episode 210 of Retro Encounter, RPG fans' weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and this week's topic is going to require a little bit of explanation, but before that happens, let's introduce the rest of the panel. Joining me today is Peter Triezenberg.
You must gather your party before venturing forth.
Kyle Seeley.
It's dangerous to go alone take this.
Sure, and Greg Delmage.
There ain't no party like a Final Fantasy party.
All right, agreed on all three counts. But what we're going to do today is something a little unusual. We're in the middle of football season, at the end of baseball season in American sports, and one great tradition of American sports is fantasy sports. Now, I can't speak for the three of you, but I did fantasy sports, mostly football, for about, 12 or 13 years of my life until I realized that it was just making me angry every week, and so I stopped doing it about a year or 2 years ago. But it's a weird tradition unlike any other where groups of people sort of emulate the idea of being a sports team owner and use statistics and game results to sort of have head-to-head matches against each other based on the results of sporting events. Like when I did fantasy football for many years, we would draft players from various NFL teams, and then we would be scored on their performance week to week. The nuances and the culture surrounding fantasy sports would take entire podcast episodes to explain, so I don't want to go deep into that. But for a few years now, we've had this offhand idea of adapting fantasy sports into Final Fantasy sports. It was something that we had on our sort of Google Doc ideas board for quite a while, but we're finally adapting in October of 2019. So, and we're going to stick to Final Fantasy mostly, and I'll explain a few rules later. But before we go into that, I want each of you to briefly explain or go into your Final Fantasy fandom and, if any, your attachment to fantasy sports. Starting with you, Peter.
Okay. I don't really have any attachment to fantasy sports. It's not really something I paid attention to. But
probably for the best.
Yeah, right. I hear it's D&D for jocks, but
oh yeah.
But Final Fantasy is something I've been into for many years since I was a kid, and to this day, I've been, keeping up. As frustrating as it can be sometimes, it's still one of my favorite gaming series.
Yeah, I've been on Final Fantasy episodes of this podcast with you, so I know at least that's true to a degree. Kyle, your turn. What do you like about Final Fantasy, and what do you like, if anything, about fantasy sports?
Well, Final Fantasy, I can't even describe it really fully. Just Square has always been so artistic with their games, like especially on the Super Nintendo when you had a lot of games that just were bare bones. You still had them like really trying with their stories, and I feel like that's just kind of carried over into the modern age. Keeps me coming back. As for fantasy sports, no experience. D&D experience, so hopefully that will transfer over there.
Oh, it will not. But Greg, let's hear your background. What do you like about Final Fantasy, and what do you like, if anything, about fantasy sports?
Well, with Final Fantasy, yeah, I've been in it for years as well, ever since my friends introduced me back in Final Fantasy VI, and then I went back through the whole series, and kind of like what Kyle was saying, it captures fantasy and wonder so beautifully in each of its own microcosms each game, except for the few random expansions we get or sequels within worlds. But yeah, it's always just such a wonderful new thing to come into, and they do it so well. As for fantasy sports, I did do a brief stint for, I think it was 5 or 6 years straight, with some friends from back in Ontario who were much more fanatical about hockey than I am, but they just wanted more bodies in their pool, so I joined in. Someone always drafted for me, and then I just did my best to kind of pay attention to who was injured, who was doing all well for points, do one obligatory trade with another friend just to be silly, and see how it all worked out. It was kind of fun, but it just became too much to keep up with. The only drafting I focus on now is every summer my friends do a summer blockbuster draft to which films are going to gross the best.
Right, and
more in my niche.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I have heard of box office drafts before. Usually that's daily or weekly fantasy. I know that another podcast I listen to advertises that a little bit, but I'm almost a little disappointed that that was your fantasy hockey experience, Greg, because I think that drafting is more fun than the maintenance of it. Um,
That's fair, and it sounds fun. I never kept up enough to know, so I just kind of had to put it in the hands of someone else. Like, pick good characters,
mhm.
good players for me. And the only rule was no Toronto Maple Leafs. Not my rule. That was the league rule.
Oh yeah, because if they were all Ontario people, then they would probably all fight over Maple Leafs a little bit.
Right? Or no, none of them. They were all into Ottawa Senators fans, so
Oh,
none of
okay.
them liked
Oh,
the Leafs.
never
So
mind
that
then.
was the only rules. No one is allowed to have Leafs because everyone hates them.
Oh, okay. So basically the opposite of my
Exactly.
of my
You would
suppositions.
think that,
Yeah,
but
we had
no, it was the opposite. Huge rivalry.
we had no such rules in our group. We had a diverse group of fans, but I would always draft too many Baltimore Ravens, and that would typically bite me in the butt. I won my fantasy league once ever in about 13 years of playing. But this is similar to you. I've been a Final Fantasy fan for many years. My first RPG was Final Fantasy IV, but at the time I thought it was Final Fantasy II. And I've been playing fantasy football since I was in high school, but I stopped a couple years ago. But as Greg alluded to, you can apply fantasy sports logic and rules to a variety of games, including, and the very first fantasy sports league was the Rotisserie Baseball League, done by a few journalist friends in New York in the early '80s. So fantasy sports fantasy sports is older than Final Fantasy, but only by a year or two. So today we are going to apply fantasy sports rules and logic to Final Fantasy, and unlike fantasy sports, we are not going to have weeks and weeks of head-to-head competition going forward over the next few months. We're only going to take part in what I think is the most fun part of a fantasy sports league, and that is the draft. So we are each going to draft Final Fantasy teams based on our own preferences, but using rules like a fantasy sports league draft. And at the end, we'll each have a team of Final Fantasy characters, and we'll just compare them by side and sort of marvel at what our crazy idea has resulted in. But I need to go into a few rules first, because when we play stupid games in this podcast, we have to have stupid rules attached. We are filling 8 positions in this draft. That is 1 main character, 3 side characters, 1 generic job or class for, let's say, a generic character that you recruit along the way, 1 summon that's sort of shared by your whole team, and 1 villain, and 1 flex. So I did some explaining to each of you for how fantasy drafts and snake draft order works, but I want to go into these. I want to go into these individual positions a little bit. And if you have any questions, please ask. Please interrupt. Main character is any main character of a numbered Final Fantasy game, which I determined is going to be either Firion, Cecil, Bartz, Terra, Cloud, Squall, Zidane, Ramza, Titus, Yuna, Sarah Vaughn, Lightning, or Noctis. If you want to get weird and include some Final Fantasy Legend or Final Fantasy Mystic Quest characters, I will not argue. Side characters is any playable character in a numbered Final Fantasy game that is not one of those mains. Villain characters can be any monster or major villain from a Final Fantasy game that is not part of the main party. You can assume that they make like a babyface turn in wrestling parlance and join your team if maybe intermittently. So sure, you can pick, I don't know, Sephiroth or Golbez or whomever for your villain, and they'll be like a special guest character. And for the generic job position, again, assume you're recruiting a blank character and they're equipped with that job. But when we draft jobs, sort of tell me what game they're coming from. Like if you say Black Mage, say, oh, Black Mage, but I sort of mean the Final Fantasy Tactics Black Mage, like some side explanation like that. And if you draft a character that's a summoner, like Rydia or Yuna or Garnet, assume that they have most of their summons available to them, but not every single summon, because like we're drafting individual summons for our team to share. So like if you draft Rydia, but someone else drafts Bahamut, assume they get Bahamut and Rydia doesn't. And then the last position is Flex, and Flex is when you're allowed to break the rules a little bit. Flex can be a second main character, or a 4th side character, or a second villain character, or any character from a Square or Square Enix RPG. So if you want to get a little weird and draft some characters out of Kingdom Hearts or Dragon Quest, or I don't know, Chrono Trigger, then that is what the flex position is for. And like any fantasy draft, you can draft your characters in any order, but you're limited to your roster spots. we're not trying to draft the most powerful teams or the most effective teams or for head-to-head competitions. We're just sort of drafting based on our own preferences, but we are competing over these characters because, once Yuna gets picked, no one else gets to pick Yuna. Once Cloud gets picked, no one gets to pick Cloud. Once someone drafts Final Fantasy Tactics Black Mage, nobody can draft any Black Mage. So that is how it is going to go forward. Again, I've explained a lot of rules in a row, and maybe this is a little complicated, especially if you're not familiar with fantasy drafts. So do we have any questions or clarification?
No, I think I get the gist of it.
Ditto.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. So do we know what the draft order is going to be? Does anyone want to go first or last or in particular?
I'm fine with order of introduction unless anyone. So it goes Peter. No, you, Peter, Kyle, me.
Sure, that works fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we're about ready to start if everyone understands. We're going to have the draft order, as Greg said a second ago, me, then Peter, then Kyle, then Greg, and then we'll go in reverse order and then repeat until each of us has our 8 characters / summons. And if I think someone is breaking a rule or is repeating something, I will let you know. I'm keeping pretty detailed records here. But and again, I say rules. We're allowed to stretch the rules a little bit as to what constitutes a side character or a villain. So don't overthink that. But do try to keep a record of what other people draft because we'll probably get in each other's way a little bit.
Right.
And one other thing, if you're interested in Final Fantasy V characters, assume that they have at least a couple jobs available to them. But because, again, like Final Fantasy V characters are pretty much blank slates except for their job selection. And if we're drafting jobs, then what jobs do they get? Basically, they can't get jobs that are drafted by other people, but they get a couple, let's say. All right. Let's get into it. Round 1, pick 1. It's my turn, which puts me in a bit of a... not precarious, but a bit of a position. I have to set the tone here, and there's not an obvious number 1 overall pick like a LaDainian Tomlinson, let's say, for fans of the NFL 10 years ago. I am going to draft in one of my side character positions Auron from Final Fantasy X. Because I like that he can reduce enemy stats, and he is one of the coolest mofos in series history. And I just want him along for the ride.
For sure.
It's a pretty solid choice, and you got some really rad swords to gander at as well in his collection.
Yes, I remember my mind being blown in the around the Final Fantasy VII range, where you could sort of see the weapons equipped on the character in battle more easily. And Auron has a bunch of big cool swords, and I can't lie, I like big cool swords a lot.
How do you feel about his drinking problem, though? Will that be a problem there, Coach?
Are you kidding? He drinks out of his flask and spits on his sword to reduce enemy stats. I'll help him with his alcohol budget.
He basically spits fire.
All right, so Peter, you're pick number 2. I'm apologize if I hustle this along a little bit, but we have 32 picks to make, so I don't want to be here for 3.5 hours. So Peter, you get pick number 2 for you.
All right, I'm gonna pick my hero, and I want Noctis on my team.
Noctis from FF15, very nice. So,
yep.
Is it just because he has a bunch of flying, flippy, dippy abilities?
Yeah, I think Noctis's power set is really cool. He can teleport. He can summon weapons. He has death magic. He has all sorts of stuff. Plus, I just think he's supposed to be a king, so maybe he'd be a level-headed party leader.
Right on. Okay. Most of my Noctis experience is from Tekken 7 because I have the season pass for the season 1 pass from that game and haven't played FF15. But I enjoyed watching Noctis in many trailers at least.
That is still one of my favorite crossover DLCs ever.
I mean, that first year of Tekken 7 crossover DLC was Akuma, Geese, and Noctis. And Noctis is the one I was least excited for, and I still think all 3 of them rule.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Kyle, you have pick number 3 in round 1. How are you going?
I'm going to go ahead and jump on the villain and get Jacked.
Eject from
Couple reasons for
FF10.
this.
Okay.
He stole
Yes,
it from me.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes, our first bit of draft salt. Please let it flow.
The drama.
So basically, he is one of my mains in Dissidia Opera Omnia because he's just so powerful, and his attitude is just in your face. But he's like, I don't know. He just kind of has this soft side under that gruff manliness, and I can't lie. When I thought Fantasy League, Blitzball popped into my head. So
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has some blitzball moves, at least in his Dissidia move set. Like he can definitely dunk on you a little bit. If I were drafting my Dissidia characters onto this team, they would be Warrior of Light, who's not really available, Onion Knight, who's also not available, and blank because I don't want to give away one of my future picks. So Greg,
So there will be a Dissidia member.
it would have to be because if I'm drafting a main character, they'll be a member of the Dissidia roster
that's fair,
almost
yeah.
by default. But Greg, you are at the end of round 1 and beginning of round 2, so you get 2 picks in a row.
That sounds delightfully fun.
So go ahead with your first.
Well, thankfully, my main character wasn't drafted yet. I for sure had a list of backups thinking he was going to go right away, but I went with Ramza Beowulf.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I've always loved Ramza as a character, his growth throughout the game. He seems his moral views seem very in line with mine, so he seems like someone who I could adventure with and lead a team with together, kind of thing, and trust to take control when need be. And he's got a really great support moveset, so can't go wrong with that either.
Yeah, his I forget what it was called in the remake, but his scream ability is you can break a couple battles doing that if you abuse it.
Is that the speed up one? Is that shout?
No. Shout increases your speed. Can increase the speed of you or a party member. Scream increases his brave, attack, and speed.
Right,
but it only
and
but it only targets Ramza.
Yeah, and it makes him a monster.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to have that on my team, and he's just a pretty stand-up dude. For my second draft pick, I'm going to go with my villain or monster. My villain choice wasn't taken, thankfully. For comedic relief, I decided to bring on Ultros.
All right.
To my team.
Some
You
seafood
need
soup.
You just need that fun-loving, person that you can just all take a crack at and who can, laugh along with you mostly, but also can get you out of a jam in a real pinch by inking everybody and just, we got a jet.
And also, if Ultros teaches us one thing in Final Fantasy VI, it's that he's very persistent.
Exactly. Perseverance is key, and I like having that on my team.
I think you fight him 4 times, and then you can also fight him a 5th time in the Colosseum if you want, if my memory serves.
That sounds right, actually.
Or maybe it's just Chupan in the Colosseum. It's been too long since I've done Colosseum grinding in FF6. Okay, so Greg, you picked Ramza as your main and Ultros as your villain for
Correct.
End of round 1, beginning of round 2. So Kyle, it's time for your round 2 selection.
Okay, I'm going to go with who I believe is a side character, since you control him briefly. Cypher from Final Fantasy VIII.
All right, pause.
Yeah.
I think Cypher is a villain and not a side character.
That's fair.
You only control him briefly as a guest, and I think in the overall scope of the game, you would call him a villain and not a companion.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
So I'm gonna veto you here. Cypher is a villain and not a side character. Yeah, pick something else.
Oh boy.
This is what I was talking about. Me being annoying with rules.
How do we feel about Alize from Final Fantasy XIV?
She definitely counts. She is a very important NPC and is with you for large portions of the game. So even though you don't really control her, Alize and most of the other Scions and is definitely a side character. So are you going to lock it in, Alize?
Yeah, I'm going to go with her. She
All right.
provides some much-needed sass to the team.
Yeah. Early on in FF14, I was pretty annoyed by Alphino when he was just basically acting like a big jerk and very full of himself, like in between Realm Reborn and Heavensward. And then he started to get a little better in Heavensward, But then when they introduced Alize as his sassy twin sister, like smacking some sense into him, I liked them both a lot better. Alize is one of the great NPCs in that game. Peter, now it's your turn. You've picked Noctis as your main and have 7 roster spots available. So how are you going?
Let's see. I'm also going to go for a 14 character.
Oh my! I thought I was going to be the only FF14 drafter here. I might need to get aggressive.
I really want Thancred on my team.
All right, Thancred.
I like him a lot. I've only played a little bit of 14, but he's. I started in Old so I've been seeing a lot of him, and I like him. I think he's got a fun personality. He's seems to know what's going on. He's got I know by the time Shadowbringers rolls around, he gets a gunblade. So that's cool.
Yeah. Thancred's moves have changed a lot over the years. In Old Realm Reborn, he was fighting with gladiator weapons, but then in one of the patches in 2013, they added the rogue class and the ninja job, and Thancred switched to using rogue weapons. And because that happens in the story at level 50, Thancred goes, "Oh, if you want to use weapons like me, you should visit the guild in Limsa Lominsa." And I'm like, "Bro, I already have a rogue at level 30," because I started playing that in at 2016, several years after that happened. But then he switches to gunbreaker weapons and gunblades in Shadowbringers, which has a lot of characters changing jobs and changing roles a little bit. So Thancred's had an exciting, and I don't want to go into the story stuff that happens with him because that is definitely big spoiler territory. But small spoiler, Thancred's always awesome.
Yeah, I'll get there eventually, but for now, yeah, definitely warmed up to him.
All right, now let's see. It's my turn, and I have 2 picks in a row, just like Greg did a few minutes ago. And I'm not sure where to go from here. All right, I am going to draft first. As a summon, I am drafting Bahamut.
Well, okay, that's a coup.
And
the question is which one?
The thing is now,
all of them.
Basically all of them. Like now that Bahamut's gone, you can't say, "Well, I'll draft Bahamut 0 and I'll draft Neo Bahamut." That's not allowed.
Dang it!
But I'm gonna say this is. Let's say this is like Final Fantasy X Bahamut, so it's very powerful. Can have non-elemental or some multi-elemental attacks, and sticks around for more than one attack. But plus the FF10 Bahamut just looks really good. And
yeah,
this is a little weird. I went for FF10 things for my first 2 picks, and and FF10 really isn't one of my favorites. But I like FF10 a lot, but it's not like a top 3 or 4 one for me. But I think that Bahamut is just by far Final Fantasy's coolest summon and one of its defining sort of visual elements. So I wanted to go for Bahamut. And for my second position, I am going to draft my main character just so someone doesn't steal him with their flex position or Kyle's main character position. And I'm going to draft Zidane.
Solid choice.
Enough choice.
He's my Dissidia main in both Duodecim and Original, and I like that he's extremely agile, has a bunch of cool daggers and sort of stuck together Darth Maul blades, and also having him on the team means I have a good thief on the team. So, and you always want to be able to steal stuff.
It definitely helps in like every game once you learn how to abuse that.
Yeah, if you know that the game's bosses have good weapons, like I don't know, it's a little bit different in, say, Final Fantasy IV, where other than like pink tails, you won't get great return from stealing from bosses. But in FF9, almost every major encounter has 1 or 2 good items to steal. So stealing is really important in games where they allow some extra balancing towards thieves. So I wanted a thief on the team, and I think the best thief in FF history is Zidane. And he's a really good, fun main character to boot. So that's my main character. Peter, you have now 1 pick, and you've only drafted a main and 1 side. So what's next?
Okay, so I'm going to draft my job for this one.
Right.
In this case, I really want the Arcanist from Final Fantasy XIV.
Okay, Peter, I'm going to slow you down right now. Do you know how the Final Fantasy XIV job system works after level 30?
Not really.
Okay, the jobs you get at level 1, or the classes you get at level 1, transform into jobs at level 30. And
Right.
the level 30 jobs get all the abilities of that level 1 class, plus they add some new stuff. So
Hmm.
the Arcanist is unusual in that at level 30 it turns into Summoner and Scholar. With Scholar being the healing version that summons a fairy, and a Summoner being the offense version that summons like a mini summon. So if you draft the Arcanist, you're sort of leaving Scholar and Summoner on the table. Do you want to draft one of those two, Scholar or Summoner, and have that sort of also count as Arcanist?
I might, yeah, okay, I might go for Scholar in that case. My
Okay,
main thing was that, what is the 14 class that uses the cards? I might be thinking wrong.
okay. Arcanist is the level 1 class that uses summons. The card one is Astrologian.
Astrologe, that's what I meant.
Okay, no, that's cool. So you're drafting FF14 Astrologian.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, total noob to 14, so that's
No,
my
it's fine, it's fine. And but
I totally feel that.
Astrologian's really cool though because it can be it is a healer class, but it draws cards for semi-random bonuses, and you can
Mhm.
do nocturnal spells to give bonus shields with several of your attacks, or diurnal skill passives to give extra healing to some of your attacks, and they can summon meteors and like starry offensive skills at a limited rate. Astrologian's really powerful, and especially towards the end of Stormblood, they were probably the best healing class in the game.
Yeah, for sure. So aside from just having a good healer on the team, I mean, everyone who knows me knows I'm like a big Yu-Gi-Oh stan. So any card-based class in any game, I'm like, okay, I'm interested. Definitely, yeah, definitely was gunning for that guy on my team.
Okay, so Peter, you have your generic Astrologian. It's some kind of player character or generic character that's
Mhm.
along for the ride. Kyle, what is your third pick going to be?
Let's go ahead and say Gao from Final Fantasy VI.
All right.
I feel like the guy doesn't get enough love, and we're talking about someone who, if you have the right rages, can cast Bolt 2 before other people. So I think that he's a good wild card there.
Yeah, he's
Ga-
a strong contender for sure.
Gao is really powerful. That stray cat rage that you can get like at the very beginning of the game, it deals 16 times the normal damage of a regular attack, and he can get advanced spells way before you can learn them from materia. His stats are really above average in almost every category, and him and Mog are the only characters that can use the snow muffler, which is the best armor in the game. Gao is awesome.
It was almost a contender on my list too, but for side characters.
But no, Gao's really powerful, but he requires a little bit more effort than other characters because you have to prepare rages a little bit. But if you just get a couple of them, even if it's just like Rhinox and Stray Cat at the beginning of the game, he is really awesome. Rhinox is the one that'll give you like Life 1 and Bolt 2.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I used to spam Marshall a lot,
I
so
would
you can see
mostly
that alt, the
I would
wind
mostly
attack.
focus on Stray Cat, and then I would read like Jabriel's Rage Guide and find out the best ones to get for the end game. But Gao's a really good choice. Thank you, Kyle. Greg, you get two in a row again for end of the third round, beginning of the fourth round. So what are those going to be?
I'm gonna dive into my side characters before some people get snatched up. I feel like I need a good caretaker on the team who's going to heal us up beautifully, and none do that better in my mind than Eris Gainsborough.
Okay, Eris from FF7.
Or Aerith, however you prefer to say it, purist or not. I've been attracted to that character for ages, not simply just design wise and whatnot. Like she's just a really delightful person on the team, brings such a vibrant personality and like a cool, calm collectedness and happy-go-luckiness to like every approach to every situation in so many ways. So it's just nice having that healer who's going to be cool under pressure and just be on top of things for you and get some really powerful healing spells.
She's really your best magic user overall for as long as you get to control
Also
her.
true, yeah.
But the thing is, I don't know. I would always get weird about using materia in FF7. I was worried about MP, so I wouldn't use magic spells as often as I should have, maybe.
I feel like that's a thing. Like I feel like in my youth, I was the same way. I'd have to
Hmm.
save up because it's like I'm not gonna be able to afford either's, and I need to hang on to my spells when I realize I'll probably have a save point somewhere. I can just throw a tent on them. It'll be fine. Like I can I've gotten in my old
Yeah,
age much smarter about it
yeah,
and using them
me
more
too.
often.
Not like hoarding items and hoarding MP is a mistake of my RPG youth, and not now. Now it's like if my MP is above 30%, then I'm doing something wrong.
Well, exactly.
So you have a second pick right now, Greg. Who's that going to be?
What do I want to dive into? I'm going to dive into job classes. I don't know if anyone's going to pick this one because I know it's not a very popular class, I feel. But from tactics, I really liked the Lancer.
Okay, so Lancer / Dragoon is is off the board for everyone now. But you're specifically thinking about the tactics version.
Mostly it's because one I know the most about. I know it's a job class I can jump into going into Dragoon in FF14. I just don't know enough about it in the end game, but I feel like it's a very viable tank, so I know it's going to be solid. But in tactics is the one I'm the most familiar with.
Dragoon's not a tank in 14.
Oh, is it not?
No, it's melee DPS, but it's very very strong melee DPS. I have Dragoon at 60, and it's really, really fun.
I'm excited to dive back in and get to experience it more. But at least in tactics, I like the fact that it has a bit of reach. I like, especially if you get their speed up and such, like the jump ability is actually pretty neat and gives you a lot of flexibility in some of the levels that have different heights and such. It can give you a lot of command. And the fact that they can just jump over anything is kind of fun to break into, like fortresses and stuff and start picking people off a lot faster. I thought that was really neat. And their design is just really rad.
Right on. So that was your first pick of the fourth round, a Lancer / Dragoon, as well as Aerith from FF7 or Aerith. This is not an argument we need to have. The official language is always portraying her as Aerith. She's really only Aerith in the North American localization of FF7 and maybe also FF Tactics. But
right.
But because, we're overwhelmingly, with apologies to Alana, Max, and a few others, we're overwhelmingly a North American website staff. So a lot of us are probably going to call her Aerith by default.
Although I think she is she Aerith in the remake? I can't remember now.
She's Aerith in the remake.
Okay, there we go.
But Kyle, it is your turn now in our Final Fantasy draft. You've drafted 2 side characters and 1 villain. So what's going to be position number 4 for you?
Let's go ahead and get Summon out of the way,
right?
Because that's kind of a hard one. I want to go with more variety, so I don't like crossing over into the same game twice, but I'm going to say Shiva. The Final Fantasy 14 variant is my preferred. She has that great theme song when you fight. Oh my!
It's like half sort of a more normal feeling battle song, and then it goes into this really awesome J-rock bit in the second half after she casts Diamond Dust the first time. And I want to avoid FF14 spoilers a little bit, but there's a lot of story stuff around Shiva in FF14, and it is so cool. Oh man.
That is another reason that was my preference for me.
And again, this nullifies now Shiva for all versions?
Yeah, that's true. So even so no one can draft Shiva, any version of Shiva. And let's say someone drafts Yuna or Rydia or something, they won't get Shiva either.
Fair game.
This is a lot to think about, and ultimately will not matter because this is going to be a podcast that lasts, 90 minutes at most. But Shiva's off the table because Kyle just drafted her as his summon. So Peter, it's your turn to draft roster spot number 4.
All right. I'm going to be flexing a main character from another series.
Oh, I think I know what this is, but please go ahead.
Ayabrea.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Unexpected.
Okay, Peter, do you think? Can you guess who I thought you were going to draft just now?
I was thinking either Sora or Riku.
Yeah, okay, one of those two. But so you drafted Aya Brea from Parasite Eve, which is super interesting. So let's talk about Aya a little bit, man. What thought went into this decision?
I love Parasite Eve. She's one of my favorite She's one of my favorite aspects of that whole series, especially in the first game. She's kind of just like a take no shit, New York police officer who gets superpowers. Essentially, she gets the mitochondria powers. And
oh, you mean the powerhouse of the cell?
Yeah, exactly. The North American education system has not failed you, I see.
I can recite the whole quadratic equation.
But how do I balance a checkbook?
What's a mortgage? Yeah,
But
for real though, I think that the American education system should drop 1 year of math just to teach kids personal finance and or life skills or something because I didn't know what a mortgage was until I was literally looking to buy a house.
oh no, I 100% agree.
So job
But
class calculator.
Interesting. You already drafted Lancer, Greg. You have to use your flex on calculator.
I'm interested.
All right,
But yes, yeah, sorry.
but yeah, back to Aya. So what's up, Peter?
for real, no, I was just saying, I think she's an awesome character, especially in the first game. Aside from just having a cool set of powers, she also has access to firearms. Um, so sometimes it just like we need a little extra security on our team, and that will come in the form of Aya and a big gun. Um,
What did her powers manifest as? I'm not super familiar with Parasite Eve myself.
she can heal herself. They basically can be like magic powers, like fire and electricity type things. You can augment bullets in the game.
Oh,
That's
neat.
Yeah,
kind of a rudimentary crafting system. It's fun.
for most everything else in Parasite Eve, the mitochondria stuff basically grotesquely mutates the host and it makes them very powerful. But they might take on a zombie-like appearance or grow tentacles, or get powerful psychic powers. But for Aya, she still looks fully human, or at least mostly. She get maybe a little bit less human as the game goes on, but it basically manifests as arcane and psychic powers. So, okay, Aya Brea is Peter's pick for a flex. Now it's my turn. I don't think anyone's going for the flex that I'm thinking of, so I'll save that one for later. But definitely people could be going after the job or the villain that I'm thinking of. But no, two people have already drafted job. See, now I'm in late stage draft thinking already. So how should I go?
You've done this before.
Maybe. You know, one thing right now I have Oron, who's a heavy hitter, and I have Zidane, who's an agile thief, but I do need some magic on my team. So I think I'm going to draft someone that can heal and cast and fight a little bit. I'm going to draft Celeste from Final Fantasy VI as a side character.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah, there we go.
She learns some magic by herself, and she can equip the heaviest armor and weapons in the game, which is a little weird, which is also true of Terra, but Terra counts as a main character in our rules. But I really like Celeste. She undergoes a pretty intense, cool character arc. She's briefly the main character of Final Fantasy VI, and I've always liked her as a design. Like I sort of think Terra and Celeste are like almost main characters 1A and 1B in FF6, and I like them both a lot. But,
That's fair.
Yeah, but decided not to draft Terra this time. So I'm going to draft Celeste as sort of an all-purpose magic user. And I get 2 in a row because we're at the end of round 4, beginning of round 5 right now. So what should I go for my next pick? So yeah, I'm thinking of either drafting my villain or my final side character right now because I don't think anyone's going to go for my flex. And for generic job, I'm not sure. There's a couple generic jobs I would really like. So even if Kyle picks something I want, I won't feel bad about going for a second choice. You know, I drafted Celeste as sort of all-purpose magic, but I think I want to go for some more pure magic offense. I'm going to draft Rydia from Final Fantasy IV.
Oh, dang it.
I like Rydia a lot. She was my favorite character basically from the very beginning because I liked how she was like a scared little girl that sort of got tough and then ages 10 years into a beautiful super mage and learns all the best black magic and a lot of summon magic.
She has a solid arc, yeah.
Yeah, she has a solid arc, and she's a really good black mage / summoner, and I've always really, really liked her. So I knew when I wanted to draft a summoner because I think that summons are like one of the coolest parts of Final Fantasy.
Yup.
I made sure that there was a summon draft position in this little game we're playing right now. So yeah, I really like Rydia. And I'm out of side characters now, but I'm pretty happy with what I have. So Peter, it's your turn again, and so far you've drafted a main character, a job, a flex, and 1 side character. So we're past the halfway point. But how is round 5 going to go for you, Peter?
I think I'm going to do my other side character, and I'm going to go with Lulu from Final Fantasy X.
Lulu from FF10. All right.
I need I pretty much because like you mentioned, I need a little more magic on my team. Lulu is the party black mage. So, and she has like a pretty cool. She has a pretty versatile elemental power set. Mostly too, I just like her design. She's kind of the goth girl of the Final Fantasy X party. She's got like her weapons are an array of magical dolls and other stuffed animals
that are adorable.
Yeah, for sure. And I also feel like her interactions with Noctis would be really amusing because they're both kind of like emo children. So
I'm more
Who can
interested. To see,
outdark themselves.
I'm more interested to see how Thancred will relentlessly hit on her.
that would also be something to behold for sure. I will keep everything in line.
You know what I always thought was interesting about Lulu? She's a really good, like, quietly a good tank for everything except for big offense. Because Yuna has better magic power, and her speed I think is average or a little bit below average. But she has really high evade and is just a magic tank. It's really interesting.
I seem to remember her being super dodgy now that.
Yeah, with Lulu, I would always teach her advanced black magic to Yuna, and then make Lulu more of a like support character that could also attack elemental weaknesses. So Peter picks Lulu. You still have one side character slot left, but now it's Kyle's turn. How are you going to go?
I'm not sure if this would be job, class, or side character, but I'm assuming job.
All right.
Let's say black belt / master from the original Final Fantasy.
Sure. I am going to call that monk.
Monk, okay.
Because that's basically the FF1 black belt is basically monk, so this will lock out all other monks from Final Fantasy. But interesting choice making it the FF1 monk. What's your reasoning behind that?
Well, I play a lot of FF1. Every 2 or 3 years, I'm like, okay, I have to replay this. And as a kid, I never ever liked that class. It just seemed really weak. As a adult, I looked into the mechanics behind the character, and it turns out it is like so overpowered. A monk can end up stronger than a fighter. I mean, he's more effective, or she, more effective without gear equipped, basically. I mean,
yeah, I think like the best move is to equip them with a bracelet / ring, and then maybe nothing else.
I think you start out. You need to give them stuff at first, but then there's like a turning point where it becomes no longer relevant to equip them anymore.
Their unarmed damage is determined by their level and by their strength stat. And so after a certain point, at the very beginning of the game, giving them Nunchaku or something is a good idea. But after a certain point, their unarmed damage will just out damage every other attack in the game. And if you're a maniac and level up your FF1 characters to 50, 60, 70, 99, then the monk will just deal unthinkable damage. I think they nerfed it a little bit in the more recent remakes, but OG FF1 monk is a monster if you put some time into them. But monks are powerful in a lot of different Final Fantasy games. The FF14 monk is super jumpy, but really, really fun. Monks in Final Fantasy Tactics are insane.
Yeah, they were a contender for me for sure for that.
And in FF5, like I make everyone max out monk because it has the highest strength and vitality bonus for the end game, and just like throwing unarmed damage onto even a black mage or something is just insane. Like monk is good in a lot of Final Fantasy games, but in FF1, it's a bit of an extreme, but really fun there too. Interesting choice, Kyle.
Yeah, I like the fact that that's one of those hidden mechanics that nowadays you'd have a tutorial with 3 pages explaining it. Back then, I mean, you didn't know. You just figured it out or not.
Right on. So, monk is your draft choice for a job. Now, that means all 3 of you, everyone besides me, has picked a job now, so I have almost my free pick of the litter.
Get a job, Mike.
That's the plan. Okay, I'll guarantee it. Next round, I will get a job. But, Greg, you already have a job, but you still have 2 side characters, 1 summon, and 1 flex position open. And you and I are the bookend positions, so you get to draft 2 in a row. How are those 2 going to go?
I think I'm still safe in my flex as well. I don't think anyone's going to go for it, and even then, I'm in the position where I'm pretty happy if someone takes my top choice for whatever bizarre reason. I can happily fall back on my second or third row. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to go back to side characters because those are the ones where we still have some pretty high request people there. My summon, again, is a pretty obscure one, so I don't know if anyone's going to go for that. So I think I'm going to go back up to sides and go with Sabin Figaro. Is Figaro's last name, or is it just Sabin?
It's Sabin Roni. No, sorry, Sabin Rene Figaro. Yeah, and then
Right.
and his twin brother is Edgar Roni Figaro.
Yes, there we go. So they're both Figaros. I just can't remember if he disowned his name because he left or whatnot. At any rate, Sabin is, again, another stand-up character I think will venture well with Ramza and Aerith. I like that, Peter, you throw that in the mix, how the characters will work together. And something that's definitely worth considering. Like, I definitely think Ramza and Aerith would get on well. And Sabin, again, his sense of justice. I love his combo system. Just as a person playing the game, I liked his combos and how those all jived out, and can definitely be really game breaking in a lot of ways. And the flexibility of him as a magic user, although right now he doesn't have access to Shiva to learn those skills. I'm pretty sure there's another summon in there that he can learn from. He has that whole ability of learning pretty much any spell. So Sabin is a really great choice to have on there. Plus, he can suplex a train. So
My favorite thing to do with Sabin in FF6 is give him the merit award item, so he can equip really powerful swords that would normally be restricted to like Terra Celeste Edgar, because he has, I think, the highest strength and something like second or third highest agility in the game. The merit award lets you equip any weapon and armor. So basically, Sabin is an amazing physical character who's kind of limited by his equipment choices. So giving him a merit award turns him into a real powerhouse. He's one of my favorite characters.
Sounds like you can destroy anything.
Final Fantasy VI is a pretty breakable game, but Sabin is great out of the box, even if you don't understand how to use the Esper stat bonus system. Like I definitely didn't know how to use as a child.
Well, exactly, and then moving into adulthood and figuring out all how these things can be manipulated, it gets kind of nuts.
I didn't really learn how to break a game until I started getting deep into Final Fantasy Tactics, I think. But Greg, Sabin is only pick number 1 out of 2 for you this round. So what is your second choice going to be?
No worries. And he fulfills my monk quota too.
That's true. Yeah. Kyle stole monk from all of us, so now you decided to get your favorite monk, I guess.
Basically, that was the reasoning. Someone who could punch stuff in the face. I'll just keep some side characters open for a bit of drama, because who knows. I'm going to jump down to my summon and get that out of the way. I went with Adramelech the Wroth from Final Fantasy XII. I enjoyed Final Fantasy XII summons, kind of the same reason that you took, or how you were looking at the FF10 Bahamut.
Exactly, the FF10 version of Bahamut.
Yeah, so the fact that they kind of stick around, they have more utility than just come in, blast something, and leave. Although the Adramelech in Final Fantasy Tactics Advance looks really neat. But I like that it's in there, it does attacks, it has a heavy curing spell in case your party starts running low on health, and then it's the replacement for Rama, and gets Judgment Bolt and just comes blasting down on everybody, and it's just a really rad design. I do remember that fight being terrible to try and get it, because it's an optional Esper in 12, and that fight was awful.
Yeah,
but once you succeed, it's a worthwhile thing.
Yeah, the Espers in 12 are interesting, because I think in the remake they give you more opportunities to summon them, but if you do the optional side quests to collect most of them, they're very powerful and fun to use. And the FF12 version of Adramelech is much cooler than the FF Tactics version of Adramelech. That's the Daisadarg boss fight. It's not one of my favorite boss fights.
Yeah, also true. Which I do like that a lot of these things got their origins in Tactics, but I like how the Ivalice world is expanded and how they stuck with that mythos all the way through.
Right on. So Kyle, it's your turn again. You have one main character, one side character, and one flex position open. So what is your move going to be?
Okay. I don't recall. Has anyone done anything with white mages yet?
No one has drafted a white mage, unless you count Eris. I picked Celeste, but she's not really a white mage. So yeah, white mage class is available, and basically all of the white mage side characters are available.
Could I do Firion, but with healing spells?
You can draft Firion, and then you can assume to use the FF2 system to give Firion almost anything you want.
Yeah, that I noticed, like, Canon, he's usually got swords and stuff, Maria's bow wielder or whatever. So last time I played 2, I just kind of reversed it. I made Firion my healer, and I gave her swords.
Sure, so
so you just have to fight with everybody else in your party?
Yeah, like, are you gonna have Alize and Gao just beat the hell out of Firion to increase his HP?
Well, yeah, of course.
Awesome. So are you going to lock it in, Furion as the main character?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
All right. I apologize if listeners, you're hearing me type this into a spreadsheet. So let's talk about Furion a little bit more. This is a little bit sad. I definitely have more experience with Furion in Dissidia than FF2 because I only played FF2 once and decided I was done with it. But
I get that too.
yeah, but in Dissidia,
Record keeper.
yeah, but in Dissidia they sort of play on the idea that Furion can equip anything and be anything by having him use like 8 different weapons or something, and they have him say Wild Rose in about half of his lines of dialogue. But like, what's your perception of Furion as a main character in FF2? Because FF2, even though it's not my favorite Final Fantasy game mechanically, it goes some interesting places drama-wise. What drew you to Furion in this case, Kyle?
Well, my first thought was I need a healer, but I need someone who's going to mesh personality-wise with the rest of them. And I don't know, I just kind of felt like when I played, I mean, it was a Super Famicom game, so I mean, it was still early enough you could kind of impose your own idea of who this character is. I got this attitude of like, he's a rebel, he wants revenge, but he's also good at heart, so that's, I don't know, he just seemed to kind of fit into that role.
He is a good main hero kind of character. I mean, when I think of FF2 characters, I think of all the ones that die because people just keep dying in Final Fantasy 2. It's like half of them are Tella from FF4. But you're going to build him mostly as a healer and not as an offensive powerhouse because you think that Gao and Alize already have plenty of offense already?
Yeah, I mean, yes, they can do some healing, but I mean, it's going to cut into their DPS if they're wasting time with Vercure and raging healing monsters. So
I think that Alize and Gao will have no problem at all focusing on DPS. All right, so Peter, it's your turn. You still have a side character, a villain, and a summon to draft. So what is your choice going to be?
I did 2 of them already. I did Thancred and Lulu.
Yeah, so you have one side character left.
Wait, we have 3?
Yeah, you get 3 side characters.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm gonna do my summon, and I want Ifrit.
All right.
Specifically the 15 version, I guess, but Ifrit in general is just my favorite summon in the whole series. I think I like the whole fire demon aesthetic. I think it's pretty awesome looking. I'm a big fan of 15's version because it's got this like cool Paradise Lost thing in the lore. How he was like, he used to be he's one of the Astrals, but he like turned against his brethren and like waged a war against them. And then he shows up at the end of the game. He's got this like very human Luciferian design. I also thought it was annoying that you don't really get to summon him until the episode Arden DLC.
Oh, really? He's not like a main game summon?
No, he's the second to last boss in the main game.
What?
Well, not anymore. Yeah, no, he's a villain. He's an antagonistic character in 15.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Arden. He's like sort of Arden's summon, kind of.
Yeah, Arden has a pact with him because their goals are aligned. They want to bring about the end of Astral.
You just made me 5% more interested in playing Final Fantasy 15.
It really is one of the coolest parts of the game is the lore surrounding Ifrit, and I wish they expanded on it a little more. But they do get into it a bit in his DLC, which is pretty cool. But yeah, no. So yeah, Ifrit, I've always adored that character, and yeah, I think that'll be the version I go with.
All right, very interesting. So all of our summons are chosen. So if any of us want another summon, you're gonna have to use a flex slot on them. And 3 people still have not drafted their flexes yet, but I think I will change that right now. I promised Greg I would get a job this round, so I'm going to do that right now. I'm definitely going to draft Samurai.
All right.
I'm not sure which version of Samurai I want to draft because I like Final Fantasy XIV Samurai a lot, and I unusually I already have a Samurai on my team with Auron. So, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do a physical offense Samurai. This is going to be the Final Fantasy Tactics Samurai.
Okay, explain. I don't remember. I've only played Tactics once, and that was for the podcast a few years back.
Yeah, that would have been in the summer of 2015. I wasn't on those episodes because I figured I already had talked enough about Final Fantasy Tactics in my whole life.
Right.
So, Greg, what do you think about a Final Fantasy Tactics Revisited episode somewhere down the line?
I will be on that episode anytime you need it. I will divorce my family. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, that
But I will happily be on it.
not necessary, but the thought is appreciated. Anyway, I like samurai stuff in general, which is why I technically drafted two of them, I guess. But Final Fantasy Tactics Samurai are special to me because I almost never ever want samurai as a main job, but it's maybe my favorite skill set in the game.
It's so neat.
Samurai are mages in Final Fantasy Tactics. They use special moves that like affect two squares all around them. So like they're basically area of effect attacks, and they either deal a lot of magic damage or there's one that has magic healing, and then two that give you like physical bonuses. Like I think one of them is shell and safe, and the other one is haste and regen. So they're really powerful support and damage melee mages, basically. So, but samurai themselves only have average magic stats. But if you give samurai skills to someone like Ramza or Meliadul or a black mage or a summoner, then it's extremely powerful. And they also don't focus on faith stats at all. So so you can have like a low faith Ramza that doesn't take any magic damage, but also deals a lot of samurai damage. Ramza Samurai is my samurai mage is my favorite way to build Ramza.
Nice.
So yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics Samurai are basically melee mages with good support and great offense. And that's why I'm going to draft them instead of a Final Fantasy XIV super damage samurai or a Final Fantasy V money throwing samurai as my job. Oh, and plus they have Blade Grasp, like the best reaction skill in the whole game.
Yeah, where it essentially just dodges any melee attack, right?
Yeah, it gives you a 90% chance to dodge, or a percent chance equal to your Brave to dodge any melee and several physical ranged attacks. Not every physical attack, but most of them. And if you're a smart person, then you'll build up your Brave to at least 90, so that'll give your Blade Grasp evade rate up to 90, or whatever your Brave's.
Bananas.
I think the way you can max Brave outside of battle is around 96 or 97. So yeah, 97% chance to dodge most physical attacks is pretty good. So yeah, I'm drafting Samurai as my job for my first pick, and I have one more, and I can go villain or flex. And I'm going to go villain. And this character that I want to pick is a little bit similar to Celeste because they have some magic and a lot of offense. And their villain status is a little debatable. This is similar to Cypher, Kyle, where this character is definitely a villain for part of the game, but you do control her briefly. So I'm not sure if you can predict where I'm going with this, but I'm going to pick Beatrix from Final Fantasy IX.
Oh, excellent.
Nice. Oh, I was going to say that was maybe Idea.
You fight Beatrix. Adia would be a similar position here, yeah. Like a villain for a lot of the game, definitely a guest character and not a main character or side character. But yeah, Beatrix has a lot of powerful sword moves, a little bit of white magic, and is just super awesome in general. You fight her, I think, 3 or 4 times in Final Fantasy IX, either all in the first disc or maybe one time in disc 2. But she is a really scary, really cool villain, and then once she decides to sort of side with the main character instead of hunt you down like a hunter, she's a really cool ally, and I always really really liked her. So I wasn't sure whether to make her a side character or a villain character, but when we made that call with Cypher because he's not really permanent and he's a villain for a large portion of the game, I decided that Beatrix is probably makes more sense as a villain than a side character here. So I decided to save her for late in the draft. But yeah, Beatrix is my villain.
She was one of my options, but yeah.
Yeah, so you thought about her, but went in a different direction. That's true for several of the characters and jobs that you guys drafted. I thought about drafting Final Fantasy XIV Monk instead of Samurai, but Kyle cut under me by drafting Monk a little earlier, or drafting FF1 Monk a little earlier, and but that was mostly because Monk is my main in FF14. It's one of the 3 jobs I have at level 70. But
you're making me feel the guilt.
Not that guilty, because there was a couple jobs I was thinking about, but you just removed one option. And for anyone curious, my three FF14 mains are warrior, monk, and white mage. But I mostly play through the main story as a monk because queue times for monks in dungeons are awful. Just DPS queues in general are just nightmares. But okay, enough FF14 minutia discussion. Peter, you have two positions left, one side character and one villain character. So which of those are you going to draft right now?
I think I'm going to draft my villain. And I've been saving this one because, like with you guys, I felt like I was a pretty safe bet with this one. But I'm going to pick Caius from Final Fantasy 13 2.
Okay, that person was nowhere on my radar, like not even on the list. I don't even know how to spell that. How do you spell Caius?
Caius.
Okay, so it would be like the Roman Caius. Okay, so what drew you to Caius?
He's honestly one of my favorite villains in the whole series, and given how lukewarm the 13 games were received, I think that's kind of saying something that he manages to stand out so well. He's he's voiced by Liam O'Brien, which helps because Liam O'Brien is awesome. Two, he's a character who's motivated by grief largely. He's trying to his whole storyline is that he's got this ward who is cursed to die and be reborn over and over and over again, and it's basically driven him insane. Like, he's watched this girl he loves die so many times, and he just wants it to stop. And so his mission is to literally kill time. Like,
okay, I was sympathizing with him right until that last bit.
Yeah, so his whole that's so basically at that point he's going to kill Etro, the goddess of death in the 13 universe that also governs the flow of time, and basically bring time to a stop so that he can let Yule, his ward, live freely. And he has a great little rapport / rivalry with Noel, who's the protagonist, one of the protagonists of 13 too.
Mm-hmm,
but
right.
Aside from all that, Caius also has a pretty cool power set. He's immortal. He has the heart of chaos or whatever, this artifact in his chest that keeps him going, and he can also use that to transform into a dark version of 13's Bahamut. Not quite a summon, but more of a morph, basically.
Like the Dark Bahamut from FF10, or because there's a lot of Final Fantasy games with evil summons here and there.
Yeah. So in general, he's just one of the coolest characters in the 13 games. I've always been pretty partial to him, so he's gonna be my villain pick for this one.
All right, thank you, Peter. Now, Peter, you and I only have one position left, but Kyle and Greg have some choices to make still. Kyle, you have one side character and one flex remaining, so what is your choice going to be this time?
Well, I'm going to say I'm not the hugest fan of this character in the games, but I feel like Allie needs someone who would understand her. Like, she's in a boys' club with all this. So
right.
Let's go with Param, because she also has a bumbling male twin that she has to keep in line. I think they get along and kind of understand each other.
So Porum from Final Fantasy IV.
Yeah.
And that gives you some more white magic so you between her and Fury, and you're definitely never going to die in this game.
I didn't plan it that way, but I was just thinking I need something to balance out, and she just happens to be a healer.
Mm-hmm. And she gets some sweet new equipment in the more recent remakes of Final Fantasy IV, and she's playable again in the more recent versions of FF4. But yeah, Palom and Porum, like they almost seem like a sideshow at first, but then they really hit you with a slightly heart-wrenching moment in the plot around near FF4's midpoint. But yeah, interesting. I would never have guessed one of the twins going in this draft, but I really didn't know what to expect in general.
That's definitely an out of left field one that I wouldn't even have seen coming.
That's not even the white mage I thought would come out of FF4. But interesting. Porum from FF4 is your choice for your final side character, unless you use that flex position for a fourth side character, Kyle.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, I'm surprised too, but yeah, we're gonna lock that in as my last side character.
All right. So, Greg, you're the person that's going to fill out your team first in this exercise we're doing. You have two positions left, one side character and one flex character. So and you have back-to-back picks, so you're going to
Yeah,
take care of them both in a row. What are your
I'm
decisions
locked
going to
in.
be? Yep, you will be locked in a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to start with, I guess, my side characters. Just again, there's so many good options, and that's one thing why like, I feel like we haven't had a lot of drafting drama. I'm glad we did at least get a few conflicts, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's just
Well,
so much to choose from in the series.
we're being easy on ourselves because there are only 4 people in this draft,
That's fair. Yeah, if there's
and
more of us, it would definitely be a
and
mess.
yeah, in my Final Fantasy, excuse me, in my fantasy football drafting days, like you would be called a wuss if your league was 8 people or less. It's like, what do you mean 8 people? That means everyone gets to pick whoever they want, kind of deal. So we're playing on easy mode with only 4 people in the draft. I wanted this podcast to be under 2 hours. So but you're basically right. We haven't tripped over each other that much, or at least we've kept our grievances private. So what's your side character going to be, Greg?
Yeah, for party makeup, I want someone who's going to be able to maintain my airship as I'm venturing around. So I think I'm going to go with Riku.
All right, that's Riku with 2 Ks.
Yep, and I just enjoyed her. I've always enjoyed her spunky personality, how bright she is, both as from a character design standpoint and just what she brings to the table. Her relationship with the Al Bhed and them as a mechanical genius force, and so it gives me one connection to at least one Sid in one of these worlds. So that also I think is a good person to have in your back pocket. And she's got some pretty great abilities with the whole kind of like she's almost like an alchemist from like FF5 kind of jet thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just some really
Yeah,
powerful skills once you learn to tap
yeah,
into those.
yeah. She gets her overlimit is mix, which has a lot of powerful uses, and she's like an FF5 chemist or an FF Tactics chemist, maybe a little bit. She's very powerful once, especially if you get good items for mix.
Yeah, like Mighty Guard is just great to kick off any battle with, really.
All right, but you have
Yeah.
one last position, Greg. That's
Yeah.
flex, which can be basically any Final Fantasy thing or any Square or Square Enix thing. So what and Peter's the only person that's drafted their flex so far because I'm sure all of us were thinking privately, oh, no one's going to get this person I'm looking at. So what's your flex position going to be?
Pretty much the same, but as I said earlier, yeah. And as you pointed out in your party, mine also is coming up on the same way, having a dearth of magic users. As far as I mean, I have Aerith who does black magic, but I'm thinking her more in the white mage vein. But she can definitely do both very well. But to go with that more black magic kind of focus, I'm going with Papoy from the Secret of Mana.
The sprite Popoy
Yep.
from Secret of Mana. Very interesting.
Yeah, again, I like having those plucky characters, I guess, to have mix it up with my noble stick in the muds up at the front. So, Papoy is just a whole lot of fun. I like, I don't know, I've always liked the magic system in Secret of Mana, so having that in my party, just drawing on the natural elements of the world, just seems really neat. And they can use pretty much any weapon, which is pretty great too.
Yeah, now Kyle, I do not want to put words in your mouth, but I don't think either of us had our hearts set on Popoy from Secret of Mana for our flexes.
Exactly.
No, but I will say that is an interesting choice. I was wondering if anyone was going to pull out a mana character for the flex.
I'm thinking of one, and if you know me, then you probably know exactly which one I'm thinking of.
I have a feeling, but we'll wait and
But
see.
yeah, well, we'll talk about that person when my turn comes
Exactly.
around.
But yeah,
So-
that's pretty much it. Luca was a consideration, but since I went with Riku, Luca was easy to kind of let go of.
All right, so Greg, your team is locked in. We're not going to go over every position until the very end of the episode, but thanks for playing. Kyle,
Thank you.
you still have a flex character to choose, and they can be, again, any character from any Square or Square Enix game. So what is your choice?
There were a lot of thoughts I had,
Look,
but
you-
I'm
you-
going to
hold-
Toaster Dog.
The Toaster Dog from Secret of Evermore.
Yes. He was insanely
Amazing.
powerful.
Yeah, especially when you charged up that ability to full and shot like 4 laser beams or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, or like a little cannon would pop out of the toaster slot and shoot some energy beams. Oh, all right, okay, another flex position that I was personally not considering, but yeah, Toaster Dog is strong as hell.
I wasn't sure if you'd allow that.
Hey, it's playable. from a Square game, even though it was developed by the American SquareSoft team and not by the Japanese Square proper. It was their office in like somewhere in Washington State, like Seattle or Redmond or Olympia or something, and yeah, that like it counts and it is super interesting. I was not considering Toaster Dog, but I mean, you mentioned you were considering several possible candidates. What else did you think of for the flex character position?
I had considered Arngrim from Valkyrie Profile. I always liked his personality. I thought maybe he'd get along with Jacked. And I also considered Chocobo from the Chocobo's Dungeon series.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
do you mean like Alpha the Chocobo or like an older version of the Chocobo?
Like Chocobo the Chocobo. But
Okay, got
I
it.
believe Alpha is kind of based off of that. So.
Yeah, and Alpha has a kind of shocking role in one of the raids in Final Fantasy XIV. All right, so Kyle, your team is also locked in, and we will go over everyone's team at the end. But Peter, it is your turn, and you have one Final Fantasy side character left to draft, with basically the entire roster of the entire series available to you, minus 10 characters, minus 14 characters. So, what is your final choice going to be?
I forgot we had 3 side characters, so I'm not prepared for this one. I'm gonna go with Vincent Valentine.
All right, Vincent from FF7. This is your first bit of FF7 representation on your list.
Nice.
Yeah, I had to get there eventually, but Vincent is just one of those characters where I think there's this YouTuber I follow, Super Butterbuns, who said it best: is that everyone in high school went through a Vincent Valentine phase.
I did. I did. Mm.
Then you get older and you realize you never really grew out of your Vincent Valentine phase.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like the Japanese idea of chuni. Like chuni is like an idea of cool that is just over the top ridiculousness and maybe some sort of grim darkness. Like oh shoot, well the Devil May Cry 5 producer said he wanted to bring back chuni with how he designed Nero and Dante in Devil May Cry 5, and I think that like yeah, so I think of chuni as sort of like an exaggerated middle school boy version of what cool is, and Vincent is very chuni, but a very good version of chuni.
Yeah, for sure. Because I've got a figure of him on my shelf, so I'm definitely biased in his favor.
Well, it's interesting too because when you were describing Parasite Eve to me, the mechanics wise really reminded me of Dirge of Cerberus. I'm not gonna lie.
It's not. It's Parasite Eve. The original is more like 90s survival horror, but with like a mix with the ATB battle system.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's different. It was more like the crafting system and the bit of magic and enchanting with your bullets and stuff. But yeah,
I'm playing a Vagrant Story right now for podcast episodes next month, and as I'm playing it, I'm like, man, I wish they made this a little simpler, like Parasite Eve. Because Parasite Eve has that battle system that is a little bit sort of targeted and sort of playing with zone and space, but also just not the overwrought mess that Vagrant Story is. But that's a discussion for another podcast.
Yeah, no. But Third Birthday's a lot like Dirge of Cerberus, and that both are not very good. But
womp womp.
Shots fired because he uses guns.
All right, so Peter, your team is also locked in, and now it's my turn to pick my flex character. Now, let's see. The mana character I was referring to earlier was Kevin.
Yep.
So I thought about putting Kevin from Second Densetsu 3 here, especially since my team doesn't really have a monk. I also thought of, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 Dragon Quest characters to the surprise of nobody. But I'm not really sure how I'm going to go here. I'm going to combine both of those ideas because I want a monk or a martial artist, and I want a Dragon Quest character. So I'm going to let extreme recency bias take effect and pick Jade from Dragon Quest XI.
Yes.
Jade is awesome. She can fight with claws or staves, is a really cool martial arts lass, and probably my favorite side character in the game. I sort of wish the game did more with her because she has a really cool personality and design, and don't give her a lot of dialogue or great moments to work with after the first, say, third of the game. But I used her a lot in my team. She's my favorite or second favorite character in that game, and I think she fits perfectly in my team of oddly mostly women. Oddly, that was by accident, I guess. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Jade from Final Fantasy. I'm sorry, Jade from Dragon Quest XI, narrowly over Kevin from Seiken Densetsu 3 / Trials of Mana. So, gentlemen, we've done it. We went through 8 rounds of a Final Fantasy draft, and uh, because I have them all neatly in lists here, I'm going to recite everyone's team in draft order. If that's okay with you guys?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, let me take a sip of this first because my voice is not starting to go, but could use some reinforcements.
That's fair. Do we get to name our teams?
Oh, sure. Okay. That's interesting. Okay, let's go for it. Greg, since it was your idea, give us your team name right now.
We are the we're an adventuring company. We're going out. We're having fun. What are we going to be? We are going to be the Fighting Moogles. Sure.
All right.
That's what we are. There we
Okay,
are.
I have a team name in mind, so I'll give Peter and Kyle a few more moments to decide. My team is 4 women plus Zidane and Orin, and because they would definitely make fun of Zidane for this, I'm going to call this team Orin's Angels.
Oh no, I like it.
All right, Peter or Kyle, do either of you have a team name set?
Largely just because, again, I have to be the huge Yu-Gi-Oh stan. I'm going to go with Team Satisfaction, which was the team name from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, and also the subject of much ridicule in the Abridged series.
All right, Team Satisfaction.
We were trying to come up with the gayest band name ever, but Coldplay was already taken.
You're like the opposite of the Rolling Stones, because you can get some satisfaction. So, Kyle, what's your team name going to be?
Well, kind of thinking the worst babysitters ever because we've got a bunch of kids and teenagers hanging out with Jacked.
Oh my, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
At least they have a dog to play with.
Yeah, true.
That also makes toast.
Alcoholics
Anonymous. So they have animal companionship and snack time covered. Worst babysitters ever. All right.
Worst Babysitters Club.
Okay, so let's list the teams one by one. Starting with Orin's Angels, we have Zidane from Final Fantasy IX, Orin from Final Fantasy X, Celeste from Final Fantasy VI, Rydia from Final Fantasy IV, Beatrix from Final Fantasy IX, a generic equipped with the Final Fantasy Tactics Samurai job, Bahamut from FF10, and Jade from Dragon Quest XI. Next, we have Team Satisfaction, starring Noctis from Final Fantasy XV, Thancred from Final Fantasy XIV, Lulu from Final Fantasy X, Vincent from Final Fantasy VII, Caius from Final Fantasy XIII-2, a generic with the Astrologian job from Final Fantasy XIV, Ifrit from Final Fantasy XV, and Aya Brea from Parasite Eve. Now we have Kyle's team, the worst babysitters ever, featuring Furion from Final Fantasy II. I was not predicting a Final Fantasy II character appearing on this list. Alize from Final Fantasy XIV, Gao from Final Fantasy VI, Porum from Final Fantasy IV, Jecht from Final Fantasy X, a generic equipped with the Final Fantasy I Black Belt / Monk / Master job, Shiva from Final Fantasy XIV, and the dog in his toaster form from Secret of Evermore. Listeners and Peter and Greg, in case you didn't know, the dog in Secret of Evermore transforms depending on what world you're in. And in the future world, it's an awesome, awesome toaster dog.
It's pretty delightful, and that's such like an eclectic list. I love that list.
And Greg, your team is the Fightin' Moogles, and they are featuring Ramza, Beowulf from Final Fantasy Tactics, Eris from Final Fantasy VII, Sabin from Final Fantasy VI, Riku from Final Fantasy X, Ultros the Purple Octopus from Final Fantasy VI, a generic equipped with a Lancer / Dragoon job from Final Fantasy Tactics, Adramelech from Final Fantasy XII, and Popoi from Secret of Mana. Wow. Yeah. Look at these 4 teams. I'd go partying with those 4.
I think they'd all be pretty solid makeups, yeah. I mean, I like that we basically just played Record Keeper, kind of.
Yeah, basically this exercise wasn't to have a serious fantasy draft. I just wanted to use the fantasy draft format to have a goofy character discussion across mostly Final Fantasy, but sort of Square games in general. And man, we probably touched on every single Final Fantasy game in the main series. I don't know. Maybe we skipped over
I think
three. Yeah, maybe we skipped
Yeah.
over three. We barely touched into 5 or 8. I thought about
I don't
draft.
recall any 11.
I didn't recall any 11 either.
Yeah.
I thought about drafting like Cerberus from FF8 as my summon, but then when I realized that no one went for Bahamut in the first 2 rounds, I jumped on it. Do we have
Bolos was on my list too.
do we have any other near misses of the draft? Like something that you thought about seriously but ended up passing on or someone else got? Because I personally I was thinking about a monk for my job, and I was thinking about Sabin for a side character, but I wasn't that I wasn't that deeply attached to either of them because I love monk stuff. So and I ended up going with Jade instead of those. But do we have any other near?
Beatrix for me, yeah.
Okay, Peter or Kyle, do you have any near misses?
I was tempted to go with Gladio on my team at one point, but I felt like I didn't want to have too many 15 people.
Yeah, I was similar. I didn't want to have too many characters from one game. I ended up doing 2 FF9 characters, but I don't think that's not overdoing it. I mostly just avoided having like 3 FF6 characters on my list, which could have happened.
It does very easily.
I was also tempted to put somebody from Octopath for my flag. Aya was too tempting. Because Olberic was such a powerhouse by the end of my playthrough.
That would have been a cool move. That's right. My biggest source of damage in that game was probably Cyrus by the end.
Oh, Cyrus is great. I love him.
I had that consideration back when we were talking about the monk stuff. In Bravely Default, I had I'm blanking on her name. The one that you're essentially tasked with protecting.
Agnes?
Yeah. I made her a very broken monk red mage kind of combo. So she would just keep destroying things and then regaining all of her brave back and just basically loop her into a 4 brave kind of loop of just destroying everything with monk powers.
That's fun.
It was really game breaking, but really enjoyable to pull off. Like you felt like a mad scientist once you got it.
I'm not sure I would have, because I mean, Bravely Default is a Final Fantasy game in almost all but name. Because they even have Black Mage, White Mage, Phoenix Down, all those things. You know, if you would press the issue a little bit, I probably would allow a job from Bravely Default or Bravely Second into this, but it ended up not coming to that. Because you drafted Lancer Dragoon pretty early, didn't you?
Exactly. Yeah. Again, I wasn't too worried about it going. Like Dancer for Final Fantasy V was my second choice in case someone went Lancer Dragoon, and even then it was really hard to pick in the moment because I don't know. Dancer's so flamboyant in 5. I love all their costumes. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Right on. So I think we have 4 very interesting teams here. Most surprising pick overall, I think, probably would go to Toaster Dog. With apologies to the other two, to Peter and Greg, because that is not something I would have predicted make it into this episode.
No, I think I think Kyle wins for the offbeat choices. Like again, Furion and Porom as well. I didn't. Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing going into this. I just kind of went with. I knew I wanted Jacked, and from there I kind of just went forward with that.
Yeah, no. In an exercise like this, I would definitely recommend listening to your heart and or gut over your mind or the internet, say, because we're not doing this for a competition. We're not doing this to create the best team or most powerful team. I think we wanted to create fun or appealing teams to our own sensibilities, and I think all 4 of us accomplished that. So thank you so much for playing this very silly game with me. I had a lot of fun, and this fills the hole in my heart that was left when I stopped playing fantasy football. So I got to at least fantasy draft something in 2019.
We have to figure out how to make this a regular thing we can somehow do every year or something to make it an actual competition.
Yeah, we can do it again next year. We could do it for another series, or even stick to Final Fantasy and just make a 9th double flex position or something just to get extra weird. Or we can play League of Legends and implement bans or something. We can get real weird if we do a second round of this, which I would not object to, but it won't happen anytime soon. But
there's so many more staff.
Oh yeah. If we could just do this again, we've done multiple rounds of the same podcast topic before with new staff. I don't object to that idea at all. Listeners, thank you for listening along to our slightly indulgent game that we were playing this time. I had a lot of fun recording this, and I hope the same is true for Peter, Kyle, and Greg.
Yep.
But let's talk about the future of Retro Encounter a little bit. We are having our second Grandia episode next week. I know that Hillary and Zach were having a lot of fun playing along those games. Zach even wrote a review for the recent Grandia 1 remake for the website. And I think this is the first time that Hillary's playing the game, so that's pretty exciting to hear her thoughts as well. And in November, we have a couple episodes planned, but the whole month isn't quite filled out yet. We're going to have 2 episodes on Vagrant Story, which I am in the early-ish run of playing. That game is confusing and weird and a little hard at the beginning, so I'm the first episode of that will probably be less positive than the second episode, is my prediction. But we aren't even close to recording that yet. And we are holding a second quiz show episode, which I am currently writing questions for. But I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be. That'll either be late November or early December. These questions are going to be fiendish, and I hope that I make my coworkers weep openly. And I think we have our December game planned, but I'm not ready to announce that yet exactly. But also in RPG Fan, you can visit our main website at rpgfan.com. There's also a Discord server, a Twitch channel, a Facebook page, an Instagram page, a Twitter page, 2 other podcasts, Random Encounter, hosted by you, Greg.
I do that most of the time.
And also Rhythm Encounter, hosted by blank.
You can do it.
Oh, sad trombone indeed.
Wound.
We also have a third podcast that is hosted by Robert Hatfield, Phoenix Edge, and they are a recently joined member of the RPG Fan family, but they host their website on a YouTube channel. And if you search for Phoenix Edge, you should be able to find that fine podcast. They mostly focus on current events. So that's a lot of RPG Fan details for listeners to check out. So, panel, let's tell the listeners how they can reach us directly, starting with you, Greg.
Well, you can find me at Greg Delmage, most places on the interwebs. Googling Greg Delmage will net you a lot of ways to track me down, and Greg D at rpgfan.com if you need to email me directly. All
right, and Peter.
As always, you can find me on Twitter at I Have Fury. I'm also Peter T at rpgfan.com if you want to send me an email with any news and related inquiries.
And Kyle.
And you can reach me at Kyle S at rpgfan.com. If you have any ideas for features, shoot them my way and I'll look into it.
All right, and as for me, you can find me on Twitter at The Real Monsoon, most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs, other times. And also, if you email retro@rpgfan.com, that's the best way to reach the website directly. I am the person that responds to those email messages. So, gentlemen, I think we did it. I think we drafted 4 weird and fun Final Fantasy teams, and maybe this will be just the first year of many for our Final Fantasy League, or maybe this will be a one-off. I don't know. Only time will tell. Thank you. Good night, and good luck.